Brooke was murdered, and police believe a man currently sitting in an Albuquerque jail was the one who killed her.
Under Oregon law, the maximum possible penalty for aggravated murder is death.
I would spit in your face if I was close enough. No. Don't even start.
More than 5 years after she disappeared, police in Oregon have finally located the remains of the 19-year-old college student.
In Oregon, there are around 2,000 registered sex offenders. So when a 19-year-old girl disappears in just a few minutes, like literally between a normal work shift and a planned lunch with her sister police, almost immediately understand this could be way more serious than a simple missing person case. Brooke is a student at Brigham Young University. She's calm, disciplined, deeply religious. She came back home just for the summer to work and help her sister out. No problems, no debts, no conflicts, no secret life hiding in the background. She's not the kind of person who just vanishes without saying a word. So the idea that she left on her own is basically ruled out right away. Her phone is still in the car. Her bag and her wallet are there too. The car is locked. This doesn't look like panic. It doesn't look like running away. It doesn't look like a mistake. It looks like a moment where someone simply didn't allow her to walk away. The search begins. Police comb through the complex, question residents, check every possible direction, area by area, door by door. And pretty quickly, it becomes clear Brooke didn't disappear by accident, and she didn't disappear alone. Then a detail surfaces that completely shifts the focus of the investigation. Several witnesses mention a dark green minivan. It had been seen multiple times near Oregon State University. It would pull up to female students, the driver would start conversations, try to draw them in, and in some cases actually attempt to pull them into the vehicle. Some of the girls got scared and walked away. At the time, no one realized this might be connected to Brooke's disappearance. 6 months pass. The searches lead nowhere. There's no body. Dozens of suspects, but not enough evidence. And then 1,400 miles away from Corvallis in Albuquerque, New Mexico, something happens that suddenly changes everything. On the side of the road, police find a 22-year-old exchange student. She's naked, severely traumatized, but alive. She survived. And she can talk. She gives a detailed description of her attacker, and it almost perfectly matches what had already come up in Brooke's case. A tall man, stocky build, shaved head, beard, a knife, abduction, sexual assault, being restrained, an escape purely accidental. And when investigators start tracking his movements, another critical detail comes to light. On the day Brooke disappeared, he was in that exact area of Oregon. So what really happened to Brooke Wilberger? Why was she targeted? And how long did this man manage to stay invisible? To understand that, we need to go right back to the very beginning. 19-year-old Brooke Wilberger lived in Oregon and came from a big family. She was the fifth of 6 kids. She did great in school and showed a lot of promise in sports. She loved basketball, snowboarding, and running. When Brooke was 16, she started dating one of her oldest childhood friends, Justin. They were both devoted members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And while Justin was away on a 2-year mission for the church, Brooke enrolled at Brigham Young University in Utah. Growing up, Brooke had speech difficulties. She didn't start talking until she was 4 years old. And her decision to attend BYU was largely because it had one of the strongest speech pathology programs out there. That's what she wanted to do with her life, help people overcome speech challenges and regain their confidence. Her family remembered that even though Brooke spoke softly, she never stayed quiet when she believed something or someone was in the wrong. She had also outgrown her small hometown and wanted new experiences, so she was more than ready for college life. Her first year went really well. After finishing her freshman year, like a lot of students, Brooke came back home for the summer. She wanted to work, earn some money, and get herself set up for the months ahead. Her sister, Stephanie, helped her land a job at Oak Park Apartments in Corvallis, about 30 miles from their parents' house. Stephanie didn't just live there, she managed the complex together with her husband. So honestly, it felt like the perfect setup for Brooke. A decent summer job, good vibes, and enough flexibility to still have an active social life. She planned to stay with Stephanie for a few days at a time while working her shifts, then spend the rest of her time with other family members. It all made sense. Everything felt normal. May 24th, 2004. It was the start of the week. A warm, calm Monday morning in Corvallis, Oregon. Just a normal day, nothing unusual, nothing that hinted at trouble. The air was quiet, everything moved along in its usual routine, and there was absolutely no sign that within a few hours, this morning would be burned into memory as the beginning of a nightmare. Stephanie and Brooke had plans to have lunch together that day, squeezed in between Brooke's work shifts. It was simple, everyday stuff, nothing special, just another small moment of sister time. Around 10 o'clock in the morning, Stephanie glanced out the window and saw a familiar sight. Brooke filling a bucket with water, getting ready to clean the outdoor light fixtures. She was working, focused, moving through her routine. That was the last moment Stephanie ever saw her sister. A few hours went by. Stephanie stayed busy around the house, taking care of chores, making lunch for her kids and for Brooke, totally unhurried, with zero sense of worry. And then at some point, she checked the clock. Time had already passed 1 in the afternoon. Brooke was late. And that wasn't like her. Stephanie later said she tried not to panic at first. She grabbed the kids and, kind of half joking, told them, "All right, let's go look for her." It sounded light, almost playful, like this was temporary, like there was no real reason to be concerned. She started walking around the apartment complex, sticking to the simplest explanations. Maybe Brooke got stopped by one of the residents. Maybe she got caught up in her work and lost track of time. But with every step, that uneasy feeling kept growing slowly but steadily. And then she saw something that made her stop cold. The buckets of water Brooke had filled that morning were still there, along with the cleaning supplies sitting near one of the light poles. Everything had been left exactly as it was, like the task had been interrupted mid-motion. This didn't look like a simple delay anymore. As Stephanie got closer, she noticed something else Brooke's flip-flops, the ones she had been wearing that day. The plastic strap between the toes was snapped, and the sandals themselves were smeared with mud. Stephanie later said it looked like they had been forcibly pulled off her feet. Like Brooke had tried to stay put, tried to resist, and had been dragged away from that spot. That unease instantly turned into fear. Stephanie called her husband, and together they ran through the complex, checking every corner, every path, really hoping to find some kind of answer. But all they found was emptiness. When it became clear that Brooke's phone, her purse, and her wallet were still locked inside her car, and the clock now showed it was after 3 in the afternoon, there was no room left for doubt. This wasn't a delay. This wasn't a coincidence. This was something much more serious. That's when they knew it was time to call 911.
911, what's your emergency? Yeah, I've got someone who's missing, a worker of mine that I can't seem to find. Missing from where? I'm the manager of the Oak Park Apartments, and this worker actually happens to be my sister-in-law. She's 19.
When was the last time anybody saw her?
Around 10:30.
Police were just as concerned as Stephanie from the very first moment. Lieutenant Ron Noble said,
"Look, adults can come and go whenever they want, and normally we would have waited maybe until the next day to see if she showed up," he said. But in this situation, that kind of approach just clearly wasn't enough.
Brooke was absolutely not the kind of person who would just disappear without telling anyone where she was going. Several residents of the complex later reported that around 10:30 that morning, they heard a scream, but no one actually saw anything. Within just a few hours, the news spread fast. While some investigators were going door to door, speaking with every resident in the complex, others were checking registered sex offenders in the area. And considering there were around 2,000 of them, that alone was a massive task. Of course, police also wanted to speak with Brooke's boyfriend, Justin, but he was about as far away as physically possible. His church mission had taken him to Venezuela, and everyone could confirm he had been there the entire time. Justin had been thinking about marriage, and Brooke often told him she dreamed of having a big family with lots of kids. He just couldn't wrap his head around the idea that this was now his reality. After speaking with him, police ruled him out almost immediately. Police Captain Jonathan Sassamon said the situation was incredibly tense. "You've got a community desperate for answers," he said. "You've got a community that's scared. Is someone still out there? And if so, who's next?" Brooke's case quickly exploded in the media and became one of the most high-profile missing person cases in Oregon's history. Hundreds of people joined the search, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation was brought in. Tips started pouring in from all over Oregon, and even from outside the state, people reporting sightings of someone they believed might be Brooke. A few days in, investigators received information about a man named Sunku Kim, who soon became a person of interest. Kim was a very reclusive 30-year-old man who lived about 80 miles from Corvallis with his parents. He came onto police radar after it was discovered he had been stealing women's underwear from college dorms across the region, and he was later charged with burglary. One of the dorm rooms he had targeted was at Oregon State University, literally just steps away from Oak Park Apartments. When police searched his home, they found thousands upon thousands of pairs of women's underwear. Detectives believed that behavior like that could absolutely escalate. Nearly a week after Brooke disappeared, before sunrise, police searched Kim's home. On his computer, they found tens of thousands of sexual images and videos, many involving rape, torture, and mutilation. They also found a file on his desktop titled osu.doc, short for Oregon State University. The file had been created after Brooke vanished, and its contents were deeply disturbing. It was essentially a guide on how to commit a sexually motivated crime and avoid getting caught, what to wear, what to bring, everything. But despite how horrifying it was, there was nothing in that file that directly tied Kim to Brooke's disappearance. In the end, Kim was ruled out when computer data, phone records, and store receipts showed that at the time Brooke vanished, he was at home and later out shopping with his father. Kim would eventually serve 7 years in prison for various charges, including burglary. His parents later filed a lawsuit against authorities over how officers stormed their home that morning, calling it excessive and terrifying. They were awarded a settlement of just over $300,000. In Brooke's case, days turned into weeks, and soon an entire month passed with no clue where the 19-year-old was. And with each passing day, statistically speaking, the chances of finding her alive dropped fast. Investigators did, however, have information about one vehicle that kept coming up in reports. They were looking for a dark green minivan, believed to be a 1997 model. They also asked a man named Brian to come forward. He had previously called 911 to report that same vehicle for dangerously speeding. Detectives had multiple reports of a minivan matching that description driving near Oregon State University on the day Brooke disappeared. A university employee named Bob said he saw the minivan with Minnesota license plates in a parking lot. He watched as the driver spoke with a female student who appeared so shaken that afterwards she went straight to a university employee to report the encounter. Another student said the vehicle pulled up directly in front of her and the man asked for directions. She quickly walked away when he got out of the car and opened the rear doors. These were promising leads, but there was still a long road ahead to figure out who had been inside that vehicle and whether it had anything at all to do with Brooke's case. Then came a painfully quiet 6 months. No updates. Search efforts slowly wound down, and life around them moved on. And then, in November, more than 1,400 miles away in Albuquerque, police received a call that had so many similarities to Brooke's case, it simply couldn't be ignored. A woman named Dara was driving with her daughters when they saw a young woman, naked, hysterical, running across a main road toward a restaurant, desperately pulling on the doors, trying to get inside. Dara immediately stopped and brought the woman into her car. She was a 22-year-old exchange student from Russia, and through tears, she explained that she had been walking down the street when someone grabbed her from behind and pressed a knife to her throat. A tall, stocky white man with a shaved head and a beard forced her into his car, sexually assaulted her, then tied her up using his own shoelaces. He drove into an apartment complex, parked, and went into one of the units. Somehow, miraculously, she managed to free herself and ran for her life. Dara called 911 and gave police a description of the man and his very distinctive vehicle, a two-door red car with red floral upholstery and a stuffed animal hanging near the window. And very quickly, police had a name: Joel Patrick Courtney, a married father of 3 living with his family in a suburb of Albuquerque. They found him just a few blocks away inside the car with a crack pipe and a knife. Joel was already a convicted sex offender. Back in 1991, he had served time for sexual assault, and both before and after that conviction, he had racked up numerous other crimes. At 38 years old, Joel had spent most of his adult life drifting, surviving on odd jobs. He'd been everywhere from Alaska to Florida, from New Mexico to Oregon. Very recently, his wife Rosie had filed a report against him and obtained a restraining order after he strangled her. His sister Dina later said that as a child, Joel had the intelligence level of a genius and once seemed destined for something great. But by the age of 11, he had started using drugs, and they only got harder over time. As a teenager, he became involved in Satanism. He never finished school and was repeatedly sent to juvenile detention for various offenses, including a sexual assault he committed at 18. Dina also said that he would come into her room in the middle of the night, choke her, and try to rape her. According to her, things seemed to stabilize somewhat when Joel met Rosie at 23 and they had children. And despite everything she endured, Rosie chose to forgive him and tried to keep building a life together. But a few years later, he slipped back into drugs and alcohol, and things got much, much darker. By the time of his arrest, Joel was drinking heavily, regularly smoking crack cocaine, and constantly getting DUI charges. He was quickly charged with the rape, kidnapping, and assault of the 22-year-old exchange student. And during questioning, one sharp-eyed detective couldn't help but notice the parallels to Brooke's long unsolved, highly publicized case, despite the fact that thousands of miles separated the crimes. Brooke and the other student looked strikingly similar, and the method of abduction was almost identical. The detective called the department handling Brooke's case and asked whether they had ever heard of Joel. That's when it came together. On the day Brooke disappeared, Joel had been in that exact area with his family. And when Joel's sister, Dina, got a call from Rosie telling her about the arrest, her thoughts went in the same direction as the police. After hanging up, she turned to her husband and said, "Do you think he could have been involved in this?" she said. "I mean, it's almost impossible to even wrap your head around the idea that this could actually be real." And then she went quiet suddenly, like the words just fell apart mid-thought. For a few seconds, the room filled with silence, heavy with thoughts about a missing 19-year-old girl whose name already carried pain and uncertainty. In that moment, it was clear saying anything out loud would mean admitting something she wasn't ready to face. Dina later admitted she couldn't say it directly, couldn't turn her suspicions into actual words. But inside, that crushing feeling wouldn't let go. Intuition, that low, persistent voice you can't just brush off, kept circling back to the same thought again and again. She felt it. He knows where Brooke is. And that certainty, even without proof, pressed down on her harder than anything she could have said, leaving behind an uneasy, suffocating silence.
Good afternoon. I'm Natalie Marmee, and General Hospital will be seen at a later time. Right now, we're bringing you the latest and breaking news in the disappearance of Brooke Wilberger. We now know police believe Brooke was murdered, and police believe a man currently sitting in an Albuquerque jail was the one who killed her.
Even though Brooke's body still hadn't been found at that point, she was officially declared deceased. It was a devastating decision, but a necessary one based on the totality of the evidence and the complete absence of any signs that she could still be alive. Meanwhile, Joel was sitting in a jail cell, and investigators spent months, step by step, piece by piece, methodically building a case against him. It was slow, exhausting work, filled with waiting and tension, but every single detail mattered. Any one of them could be the thing that finally tipped the scale. Once law enforcement confirmed which vehicle Joel had been using at the time, everything started to click. It was a dark green minivan, the exact vehicle multiple witnesses had described earlier. People remembered it speeding through the area, showing up and disappearing, drawing attention because something about it just felt off. Now, that coincidence didn't feel like a coincidence at all. The forensic team went in with zero compromise. The van was essentially taken apart, panels removed, swabs collected. Every inch of the interior examined every surface, every crevice, every hidden corner. It was a painstaking process that stretched on for months. And through all of that time, Brooke's family lived in limbo, waiting for anything, any answer, any confirmation of the truth. Eventually, the results came back, and there was no room left for doubt. In the spring of 2005, experts officially confirmed that Brooke's DNA had been found inside Joel's vehicle. On top of that, strands of her blonde hair were discovered on a hair tie found in one of his bags. It was such a small, almost insignificant item, but it became another undeniable link between Brooke and the man who had taken her. Further DNA testing revealed an even more horrifying truth. The results confirmed that Brooke had been raped. That conclusion locked everything into place, stripping away any remaining uncertainty and turning suspicion into a clear, evidence-backed reality, one that could no longer be ignored.
We are at a milestone in this case in that on Friday, July 29th, last Friday, the Benton County Grand Jury reviewed this case, the case of Brooke Wilberger. The grand jury, after hearing all of the evidence, returned a 19-count indictment accusing Joel Patrick Courtney, who's 39 years old, of 14 counts of aggravated murder alleged in alternative theories, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping in the first degree, 1 count of first-degree rape, 1 count of first-degree sexual abuse, and 1 count of first-degree sodomy. Under Oregon law, the maximum possible penalty for aggravated murder is death. With charges pending in New Mexico, however, it is unlikely that he'll be available for extradition to Oregon for some time. So don't expect to see the defendant before an Oregon court in the next few days or the next few weeks. As you know, the defendant was arrested November 29th of last year in Albuquerque on similar but unrelated charges in their jurisdiction involving the abduction and sodomization of a college-age student there in New Mexico. The huge difference between that case and our case is that the victim in New Mexico was able to escape and survive the attack and report it to the police.
Eventually, Joel Patrick Courtney was charged with 19 separate counts. The list was brutal on its own: aggravated murder, kidnapping, sodomy, and rape. Just reading through those charges painted a very clear picture of the kind of person the justice system was dealing with. The prosecutor later recalled that when Joel was shown the full stack of official paperwork laying out every charge against him, he showed no fear, no shock. Instead, he spent the entire day laughing about it with other inmates, like this wasn't about real crimes and shattered lives, but some messed up joke. Despite all of that, Joel continued to insist he had never even heard of Brooke, let alone had anything to do with her. He clung to that story stubbornly, almost theatrically. But there was one moment that Cammy Wilberger never forgot. When Brooke's mother came to him and asked him directly, no softening, no detours, whether he had killed her daughter, he paused. Just for a second, and that silence spoke louder than anything else. Then he looked at her and coldly said, "They're never going to be able to pin that on me." It didn't sound like a defense, it sounded like confidence. Like he truly believed he was untouchable. In January of 2007, despite Joel's claims that his mental state supposedly made him unfit to stand trial for Brooke's murder, the court ruled otherwise. After reviewing the evidence and multiple expert evaluations, he was declared mentally competent. That decision was critical. It meant the trial would go forward. Cammy later shared that she was driving when she got the news. The relief hit her so hard that she actually started dancing a little in the car, just instinctively, without even thinking about it, letting out years of pressure all at once. She admitted that only then did she realize how close she had come to total darkness, just from the thought that he might escape trial entirely, that the truth might never be spoken out loud. But there was still one more hurdle ahead. Before Joel could face trial for what he did to Brooke, he first had to be sentenced for the attack on the woman in New Mexico. And that delay only stretched the agony for Brooke's family even longer, forcing them to keep living in that unbearable space between fear and hope for far too long.
A Rio Rancho man who faces a murder charge in a highly publicized Oregon case has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for kidnapping and raping a University of New Mexico foreign exchange student back in 2004.
Eventually, Joel Patrick Courtney formally admitted his guilt and heard his final sentence, 18 years in prison for kidnapping and rape. For the court, it was just another procedural step. But for Brooke's family, it was a brutal, emotionally charged moment. Even as the sentence was read aloud, the courtroom felt heavy, almost suffocating, with the shared understanding that no ruling, no matter how severe, could ever undo what had been done. And even then, Joel continued to behave with arrogance and open contempt. He blatantly ignored the gravity of the moment, made inappropriate gestures, exchanged looks that had no place in that room, and showed clear disrespect toward both the court and the judge. It felt less like indifference and more like a deliberate challenge to the entire justice system. Like he was trying to prove he felt no shame, no remorse, no responsibility at all. That cold, performative disrespect made one thing painfully clear to everyone in the courtroom. This was exactly who he was.
Have no respect for this court. You're the rudest person I've ever met. I would spit in your face if I was close enough. Well, don't even start.
Police later said that the more he revealed himself, really showed who he was, the stronger their determination and anger became. Every word he spoke, every small detail, just confirmed exactly what kind of person they were dealing with. He knew where Brooke was. And that knowledge hung in the air like a weight you could almost feel pressing down on everyone. For investigators, this stopped being just about doing their jobs. This became personal. They were going to find her no matter what, at any cost, and they were not going to let him break them. 5 long years passed since Brooke had last been seen. 5 years of not knowing, of waiting, of quiet, relentless pain for her family. By early 2010, Joel's trial was finally scheduled. He was facing the death penalty, and prosecutors understood very clearly that this might be the only real leverage they had. They were prepared to offer him a deal, but only in exchange for one thing: the exact location of Brooke's remains. But for months, he refused, he stalled, he manipulated. It felt like he was playing with everyone, the detectives, the prosecutors, Brooke's family. For him, this was power. It wasn't until he was beaten several times by other inmates and cut off from his anxiety medication that his stance began to shift. Trapped by his own situation, he decided he wanted better conditions. And that's when the knowledge of where Brooke was became a weapon, something he deliberately held over everyone's heads until he got what he wanted. Eventually, he laid out his demands. Joel said he wanted to serve the remainder of his 18-year sentence in New Mexico, closer to his family, and only after that be transferred to Oregon. On top of that, he demanded that the death penalty be taken completely off the table. It was cold. It was cynical. But everyone involved agreed because what was at stake mattered more than principles. And only then did Joel finally change his position. He admitted his guilt and, at last, agreed to give Brooke's family what they had been begging and praying for nearly 5 years: the chance to find her, to bring her home, and to close, at least in part, this endless, exhausting chapter of their lives.
Missing person posters are being taken down for Brooke Wilberger. More than 5 years after she disappeared, police in Oregon have finally located the remains of the 19-year-old college student.
Oregon's Attorney General is in Eugene for several reasons, but he spent the day tackling questions about the Wilberger case. John Kroger says he applauds the work done by the Benton County District Attorney's Office. Oregon's AG is pleased with the outcome, getting Joel Courtney to give up Wilberger's remains as part of the plea deal. He also believes the DA's office handled the case well, especially since the case came with a lot of public scrutiny.
I think it was very important not only to make sure that he serves a life sentence without any chance of release, but also to make sure that the remains of the victim were found. I think that was extraordinarily important.
Near an abandoned, almost forgotten road about 12 miles west of where Brooke was taken, her remains were finally found. It was a remote spot, far from neighborhoods, a place where almost no one ever went. That's where he had hidden her body, on private land, doing everything he could to make sure she'd never be discovered. He concealed her beneath a fallen tree, using the natural landscape as cover, like he thought nature itself would erase what he'd done. For official identification, investigators had to rely on dental records, an undeniable but cold, impersonal method that so often becomes the only answer in cases like this. But this time, there was something else, something far more painful. Brooke was also identified by her mother, Cammy Wilberger. She was able to say with absolute certainty that the silver watch found on the body belonged to her daughter. It was the same watch Cammy had given Brooke for Christmas. She remembered that moment so clearly, choosing it, giving it to her, seeing it on her daughter's wrist. That memory burned itself into her mind, becoming the final, devastating confirmation of the loss. Brooke's family, even after everything they had endured, showed an incredible amount of dignity and inner strength. They said they felt gratitude, yes, even toward Joel for leading authorities to Brooke's body so they could finally bring her home and say goodbye. Those are words that are hard to comprehend considering the magnitude of the harm done. But that was how the family tried to find at least a small measure of closure in a story defined by loss. Cammy said, "We're grateful that justice was finally served and that he'll never be eligible for parole," Cammy said. "Now he can just live out whatever is left of his life." In the courtroom, Joel Patrick Courtney admitted that he was the one who committed the crime. There was no emotion in his voice, almost detached, as he explained that on that day he had been driving around the area deliberately looking for a young woman. This wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't some sudden impulse. By his own admission, he was already in hunt mode, actively searching for a victim. He also confessed that before he ever crossed paths with Brooke Wilberger, he had attempted to abduct 2 university students. These were the same women who had previously come forward and shared their stories publicly. Those attempts later became additional charges, confirming that Joel's actions followed a clear and extremely dangerous pattern. When he saw Brooke alone, focused on her work, vulnerable in the middle of an ordinary day, he decided to change tactics. He pretended to be a delivery driver, creating the illusion of a normal, harmless interaction, and the moment she stepped closer to the van, trusting what she saw, he switched instantly to violence. Holding a knife, he abducted her, forced her into the vehicle, bound her with tape, and sexually assaulted her. It happened fast, brutally. There was no real chance for her to escape. After that, he drove Brooke out into the forest to a remote, isolated area where no one could hear screams or come to help. There, he kept her alive through the night. Those hours became an endless nightmare, filled with fear and desperate resistance. Eventually, he beat her to death, ending the life of a young woman who fought back until the very end. Joel claimed that he hadn't initially planned to kill her. He said he was shocked by how fiercely she resisted, by how strong she was. According to him, that resistance became the turning point. He also admitted that he hid her body so carefully that it likely never would have been found if he hadn't revealed the location himself. That admission only underscored the cold calculation and the sheer level of brutality behind the crime.
Not much has been disclosed in the Wilberger case about where the crime actually took place. Authorities say it happened in the woods in Benton County in Coastal Range. And for the people who live in that area, they say they can't believe something like this could have happened in their backyard.
This is a real, nice community, and, bad stuff just never happens out here. It just doesn't.
It's kind of eerie that he went in, he could have been in here. He could have been in here the next day, the day before.
Mark Scacco owns the Blodgett Country Store, which is about 3 miles from where he thinks the crime was committed. He says he's surprised it could have happened so close to home.
Some of us actually did search that area because it's a little abandoned road. and nobody seen anything. So, you know, if something wants to be hidden, it can be hidden very well.
But the news about Wilberger hasn't changed their attitude about Blodgett.
We love it here, and we just are so sorry that this happened, but it doesn't change our feeling about the community.
And no one worries there's anything else hidden in these woods.
I'm not going to pick up my bags and leave. This is my hometown, and anywhere you go, it can happen.
Joel Patrick Courtney never apologized to Brooke's family, not once. He showed no remorse, no regret, not even the slightest hint of compassion. Throughout the entire process, he stayed cold and detached, like everything happening in that courtroom had nothing to do with him at all. For Brooke's family, that silence was almost as painful as the sentence itself. The absence of any words only underscored the depth of the harm and the finality of their loss. In the end, the court brought the case to a close. Joel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. That meant he would never walk free again, that every remaining day of his life would be spent behind bars. But even that sentence couldn't bring Brooke back, and it couldn't heal the pain her loved ones carried. It simply marked legal accountability for something that could never truly be undone. Joel's sister, Dina, said, "From the very first hint that there might be a connection, our family was firm about one thing," Dina Courtney said. "As much as we loved Joel, our first responsibility was to God, and we were willing to do whatever it took to help uncover the truth and understand exactly what had happened." She continued, "Our very first prayer, back on November 30th, 2004, was this: Heavenly Father, if Joel is responsible for this, please let him tell the truth. And please, let Brooke be found. When I learned that the truth had finally come out and that Brooke's body had been found, I cried. The emotions were bittersweet. But I'm incredibly grateful that the Wilberger family finally got the closure they fought so hard for. And even though it was never formally proven in court, investigators with the Federal Bureau of Investigation were convinced of one thing: he very well could have been a serial killer. In their view, his behavior, his mindset, and the nature of the violence fit a familiar and terrifying pattern a little too perfectly. Over the course of the investigation, they identified at least 3 additional possible victims in Oregon, people Joel likely sexually assaulted and murdered. The cases shared striking similarities, the same disturbing details that kept pulling investigators back to the same name again and again. One prosecutor later admitted that in her entire career, and honestly in her entire life, she had only ever felt something like this once before. She said she'd worked with plenty of violent offenders, but only one other person had ever given her that same deep, almost physical sense of fear. Like that moment where the level of evil really hits you, and it's chilling, where it makes your skin crawl and your hair stand on end, and that person was the serial killer Richard Ramirez. That comparison landed hard. It underscored something deeply unsettling, that what they were dealing with here went far beyond what anyone would call an ordinary crime.
It's just a total community effort, and not just Corvallis, but all of Oregon, really. Everybody worked together.
Cammie Wilberger takes the podium at the LaSalle's Stewart Center in Corvallis. She sends her deepest thanks to those, some strangers, who've lent their support over the years to help find her daughter Brooke. Because it seems one way or another, everyone in Corvallis is connected to the Brooke Wilberger case. The story lingering strong for years in the town, so much that it easily brings tears to former volunteers.
I walked several different days, trying to find her.
Organizers say without a doubt this has been a defining moment for Corvallis.
We do not want ourselves as individuals or this community to be defined by tragedy.
As for the next couple of years, Cammie Wilberger says she hopes not for closure, but a beginning to what's been shown to them all these years: love.
We have a lot of things that as a family we're doing, but everybody just moving on, doing good things, trying to do the best you can do to love other people and do what Brooke would have done.
Brooke went from a completely ordinary, routine task, washing outdoor light fixtures, and the calm expectation of a planned lunch with her sister, to an absolute, all-consuming nightmare in just a matter of minutes. It was one of those normal days that don't stand out at all, when your mind is on everyday stuff and simple plans, not danger. Nothing suggested that life could change so suddenly and so permanently in the blink of an eye. She was at work doing her job, thinking about lunch with her sister, about that short break in the middle of the day, something familiar, something comforting, and then everything snapped. Reality broke apart. No warning, no time to prepare. What should have been just another regular workday turned into the worst possible scenario imaginable. Her sister, Stephanie Wilberger, said, "I could live to 80 years old, live an entire lifetime, and I don't think I'll ever be at peace with what happened to her," Stephanie said. "Time isn't going to make this okay." She admitted she can't help but dream about the day when she might finally stop replaying that morning in 2004, over and over, minute by minute, step by step, detail by detail. Her memory keeps dragging her back there, forcing her to relive it all again. Every tiny thing resurfaces. The choices that were made, the words that could have been said or never, were the decisions that maybe, just maybe, could have changed something. She keeps asking herself the same question on repeat. Did she ever have even the smallest chance to affect how that day unfolded? Was there another path, another version of events? Or was everything already decided long before that morning ever began? It's a closed, endless loop of thoughts that won't let go, that wears her down, that still hasn't released her even after all these years. Cami Wilberger said that grief isn't just pain that fades or dulls with time. It's not a wound that heals. It will always be deeper and heavier than anyone on the outside can truly imagine. As the years pass, it doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. It grows quieter, maybe, but it also becomes constant, turning into a permanent part of the family's life, a shadow that's always there. Our family often compares it to an iceberg, she said. What the public sees looks huge, terrifying, overwhelming, but that's just the tip. Just a small piece of what's really there. What we carry inside, the pain, the guilt, the weight, we live with that every single day, far away from other people's eyes and their understanding. Guys, I truly want to thank every single one of you for watching this video all the way to the end. This story is incredibly heavy and painful, and I want to be completely honest with you. While I was working on this, going back over the details again and again, trying to piece everything together into one clear story, I just kept breaking down in tears. Some parts were especially hard to sit with, to really let them sink in. But I felt it was important to tell this story exactly as it is. Please don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below. It genuinely means a lot to me to know what you felt and what stayed with you after watching. And if this story touched you, feel free to subscribe to the channel and hit like on this video. For you, it's just a few seconds, but for my channel, it's real support, and it truly helps it grow. Once again, thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your trust. Take care of yourselves and the people you love. I'll see you in the next video.